Hey everyone, just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you left us a review and shared these episodes with a friend. We really appreciate your support in helping us to grow this podcast. And with that, let's get started with this week's episode. Christmas is a time associated with joy, hope, and goodwill. But for many, stress, anxiety, and the overwhelming aspects of life still seem to find ways to crush people's spirits, even during this time of the year. This isn't a new phenomenon. Since the fall of mankind in Genesis 3, people have struggled with worry and fear, often pushing them to acts of desperation and posing some of the biggest challenges to faith. Today's episode will focus on an American hero who was dealing with these very same struggles all the way back in 1946, and who genuinely sought the help of divine providence when he was at his lowest point. This is the story of George's prayer, a wonderful plea. George sat at the bar with his head bowed low. Joyful music and the sound of laughter surrounded him. Outside, the snow was falling, and people of his little town were hustling home to be with their families. It was Christmas Eve, but Christmas was the farthest thing from George's mind this evening. Sitting there in Martini's bar, he was at his breaking point. Somehow, his business was short $8,000. And he had no idea where that money could have gone. On top of that, his little girl, Zuzu, was running a fever. A small one, but still something that worried him. He had just given Zuzu's teacher a very large piece of his mind over the phone a little while before for not making sure her coat was buttoned before sending her home from school. To make matters worse, in a desperate rage, he had just run out on his family after yelling at his children and destroying half of his living room. His children's tears had shaken him, but it was the look on his wife, Mary's, face that had stung the most. "George, why must you torture the children? Why don't you—" She had trailed off. She hadn't finished her sentence, but she didn't have to. George didn't know where he would go, but he knew he couldn't stay at home any longer. Where was that money? Uncle Billy had lost it, but George knew he would be the one to take the fall for it. The police would be coming for him tonight. Mr. Potter would see to that. What was he going to do? How could his life have come to this? This wasn't how things were supposed to be at all. His whole life he had dreamed of being somebody, of building things like bridges and skyscrapers, and of traveling the world. Instead, he had been stuck in a dead-end job in his hometown, barely able to put food on the table each month. Perhaps, he thought, perhaps everyone would be better off if he was no longer around. He knew this was a forbidden thought, but like Mr. Potter had said just a little earlier that evening, you're worth more dead than alive. In a moment of sheer desperation, George muttered, "God, oh God, dear Father in heaven, I'm not a praying man, but if you're up there, and you can hear me. Show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope. Show me the way, God." Tears flowed freely and streamed down George's face as he sobbed onto the bar at which he sat. "Cut!" yelled director Frank Capra. He knew right away that cinematic magic had just taken place before his eyes. It was, and would remain, one of the most moving things he had ever seen in his life. This was the set of the now classic Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life, starring the legendary Jimmy Stewart as George Bailey. Outside, the snow which had been falling was fake, made of a mixture of soap, firefighting foam, and water. In fact, it was currently one of the hottest summers on record in Southern California at the time of this filming. But not all which had just taken place was fraudulent. The scene which Jimmy Stewart had just portrayed had not called for him to break down in tears as he just had. That had been a moment done all on Stewart's own, a natural outpouring of his emotions in the moment. In the words of director Frank Capra, these were, quote, "real tears from a real man." In an interview later in life, Capra would further say, "Jimmy just broke down. He sobbed like a child. I didn't stop the camera. I couldn't. It was too real, too beautiful. That was the moment the picture came alive." After the scene concluded, Jimmy couldn't get those lines out of his mind. And that was not all he could not remove from his mind. In a time when PTSD was not a known acronym or term, Jimmy was struggling mightily with it. Combat fatigue, some called it. Others called it being flak happy. He had become prone to nervousness and mood swings, and the stress of combat had marked him considerably. Although he had always been rail thin, he had lost a massive amount of weight recently, and his hairline had begun to noticeably recede. Even now, his thoughts echoed with the booming of flak guns from somewhere over Germany just 2 years ago. His dreams continued to be haunted by the images of planes exploding and men falling from the sky. Men that had been under his command. Men who were fathers, brothers, husbands, and who never made it home from the skies over Germany. His hands shook as these things continued to haunt him. James Stewart, known fondly by so many as Jimmy, had served nobly as a B-24 Liberator pilot in World War II, flying a total of 20 combat missions throughout the war. During that time, not a single member of his crew had been lost, but he was also a squadron leader during the war, meaning several crews of B-24 bombers were under his command. Many of these had been lost, particularly in raids deep into the heart of German territory in 1944. In a particular bombing raid in February of 1944, Jimmy had witnessed planes under his command exploding before his eyes. He saw the wings of several other aircraft sheared off before careening toward the earth. In one particular instance, an 88mm flak shell created a 2-foot hole just inches from his foot, perhaps his closest brush with death in his life. Inches, just inches, had decided whether or not he got to come home at all. Just inches had determined whether or not Jimmy would become George and become acquainted with Bedford Falls. The words of Psalm 91, which his father had tucked into his pocket before he left for war in 1943, had held true on that occasion in particular for Jimmy. He still remembered the psalm well, and he had carried it with him in his pocket on each and every flight he made during the war. So often he had found himself reading these words. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see with the recompense of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you, to guard you in all your ways. On your hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot. Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him, because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. These things had been fresh on Jimmy Stewart's mind when it came time to film the scene of George Bailey's prayer in Martini's bar. Years later, in an interview with Guideposts magazine, Stewart would recall, "As I said those words, I felt the loneliness, the hopelessness of people who had nowhere to turn, and my eyes filled with tears. I broke down sobbing. This was not planned at all, but the power of that prayer, the realization that our Father in heaven is there to help the hopeless, had reduced me to tears." He felt a genuine connection to those who were struggling with pain and mental anguish in those post-war years, as well as a deep connection with his Heavenly Father at that moment. He could empathize with those who were struggling with pain, depression, and trauma. And he also knew that his Father in heaven was able and willing to mend the broken, like himself, and to save souls from ruin and destruction. In the latter years of Jimmy Stewart's life, he would point to It's a Wonderful Life as his favorite film to be a part of. And a large reason for that was due to how moved he was by George's prayer. On a talk show in 1973, after being shown the prayer scene once again, he recalled, That scene there, I remember when I first read the first draft of the script in that scene. The little prayer affected me when I read it. And when I did it in the movie, it did. And it did the same to me right now. George's prayer was Jimmy's prayer, and it has been the prayer of many down to this very day. In the years since its release in 1946, It's a Wonderful Life has become a staple in many American households, including my own, for this time of the year. Not a single Christmas Eve passes in my house without George Bailey making an appearance. And a huge reason for this is the performance of Jimmy Stewart, particularly in scenes like the one we examined in this episode. Knowing the story behind his performance, and especially behind how he delivered the lines of that prayer, give even more meaning to the moment. For decades now, this scene has reminded Americans that no matter the season, many people are finding themselves at their lowest point, contemplating the worst. The weight of the struggles of this world can become crushing, and so many reach a point of desperation in the midst of their burdens. But it also reminds us that even in our lowest moments of despair, we are not alone. We have a Father in heaven who calls us to call upon Him in our hour of need. And our hour of need is every hour, for we cannot exist a single moment apart from His divine providence. As the old hymn says, I need Thee every hour, most gracious Lord. No tender voice like Thine can peace afford. The effects of a sin-cursed world surround us and continually let us know that we can't make it on our own. We need Him in times of plenty and in times of poverty, in times of jubilation and in times of grief. From Los Angeles to Little Rock, from Birmingham to Bedford Falls, we need him. Maybe this Christmas, like George Bailey, you've reached the end of your rope. Maybe it feels like you have nowhere to turn. Maybe you too feel like folks would be much better off if you weren't around at all. Hear me when I say that your life matters. Your life has inherent value, and the world is better with you in it. And if you never have before, run to Jesus, trusting in him for the salvation of your soul. He will give you rest, peace, and everlasting joy, which goes so far beyond temporary happiness. If you have trusted him for salvation, but still find yourself racked with the strains and anxieties of this world, continue to run to him. Remember the words of 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7, which says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you." And recall Psalm 46:1, which states, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling." Run to him, therefore, in prayer and in trust. Our grief and troubles are temporary, but his life-giving power is eternal. And the eternal life in his presence compares to nothing else we could ever imagine. It truly is a wonderful life. May we, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, trust in him now and always. Thanks for listening. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a wonderful life.